bag makers, Lisa here from Andrie Designs. I often have people ask me how to stitch curves and what techniques or tricks I use to get a really nice tight stitching line and make sure it's nice and uniform and nice and gentle around the curve. So I thought I'd pop a quick little free tutorial together taking some excerpts from our poly crossbody pouch video just to show you what I like to do. The methods and tricks that I've found over the years have been really helpful. So hope it helps. Let's get started. So to stitch your two flap panels together, as I said, we're going to use a 1/2 inch allowance, and I really like using my walking foot for these sorts of seams. I just find it really helps to feed the fabric through nice and evenly. So I'm going to line up my panel with the 1/2 inch mark on my needle plate just before the top straight edge, and I'm just going to make a couple of stitches forwards and backwards to lock my stitching in. And as I said, we're using a 1/2 inch allowance, a normal stitch length, and make sure you have your needle set to the needle down position so that when you stop, your panel is held in place. In order to stitch a nice gentle curve that's fairly symmetrical, as we stitch, we're not going to be looking at where the edge of the fabric is feeding into the foot. We're going to be looking at where it is in line with the needle. So we're going to make sure that we maintain that 1/2 inch allowance directly out from where the needle is stitching rather than as we come into the foot. So we're just going to start stitching nice and steadily down this first side. And as it starts to curve, I'm looking up here at the 1/2 inch mark on my needle plate rather than down the front here. So I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it, but the curve of the fabric is actually in from my 1/2 inch allowance. That's fine here. What I'm looking at is back here in line with the needle, and I can see that it is maintaining that 1/2 inch, and that is what we want. Another part of getting a really nice gentle curve is actually maintaining your speed. So if you find that you go slow or you stop and start a lot, your curve won't be as gentle and won't look as tidy as someone who stitches and just continues a nice steady speed all the way around. So again, looking at the seam allowance at the back here where it's 1/2 inch, my panel is just shy of that, but at the front here it's probably about 1/8 of an inch shorter, and that is fine for here because it's still being fed under the needle, but where we want it to count is back by that needle. So don't panic if the front of your panel also looks, oh no, it doesn't look like it's going to meet that 1/2 inch allowance. As you keep turning and rotating your panel, it will line up if you keep your eye back near the needle. When you get to the end, just make a few stitches to reinforce, and you can take your work out. And that looks really good. We've got a nice gentle curve that maintains that 1/2 inch allowance all the way around. So now, for a top stitching length, we're going to use about 3 to 3.5 millimeters. And for a normal stitch length, a normal straight stitch, you would just continue to stitch down and around this curve. However, I like to use a triple stitch, which you may have seen in other videos. The process is exactly the same for top stitching as it would be for a normal straight stitch. It just takes longer to get there. So I'm just going to switch my machine over now. So we're just going to maintain the 1/8 allowance, make sure you have your length reduced from your basting stitch length down to your top stitching length of about 3 to 3.5 millimeters. And we're just going to work our way nice and gently around this curve all the way back up to the other top edge. As I said earlier, when stitching curves, it actually is easier to get a gentle curve if you maintain a fairly steady speed. It doesn't have to be fast, but it just needs to be fairly even so that you can gently guide the fabric and turn the fabric at a nice even rate as you work your way around. If you stop and start, you'll find that more often than not you will end up with not a gentle curve around your gentle curve, as ironic as that may sound. So just working nice and slow and steady around your curve. Try to maintain that 1/8 seam allowance as best you can. When you get back to the start, just make a couple of stitches to reinforce and you can finish off. You can take your flap out and hopefully you're as happy with your curve, oh, there it goes, as I am. So from here, grab your flap off the floor if you've just dropped it like I have and head back to your work surface and we will continue. And that's all there is to it. You've now seen how I like to stitch curves on panels, especially such as the poly crossbody pouch. If you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to contact us via the contact page of our website, or you can post in our patterns group on Facebook as well, and I'll pop links to both of those in the description below. For now, that's it from us, so until next time, happy sewing!